I never thought I'd end up here, but life has a way of throwing punches when you least expect it. My name's Kevin, and I've been married to Lisa for about 8 years now. We had our ups and downs, sure, but I always believed we had a solid, if slightly turbulent, partnership. She was beautiful, sharp-tongued, and sometimes bitchy. Yeah, she could be a handful, but she was mine. Or so I thought. From the start, Lisa was a little obsessed with her appearance and health. She always kept up with the latest skincare, hairstyling, and of course her dentist appointments. The dentist's name was Dr. Carter. Yeah, I know, classic, who she'd been visiting for years. I trusted her maybe too much. Tell me she just went for cleanings, checkups, and occasional whitening treatments. No big deal, right? But over the last few months, I started noticing weird little things. She'd get defensive when I asked about her appointments. It's just regular stuff, Kevin. Why do you even care? She'd snap, or she'd suddenly leave early in the morning or come home late, claiming she was working late at the office. Still, I brushed it off, thinking she was just stressed or busy. Maybe it was work, or maybe she was hiding something. Hell, I didn't want to believe it, but I had a sinking feeling that something was off. Then came the small things, her phone ringing at odd hours, her being overly secretive about her messages. I caught her deleting texts once, and she shot me a glare that froze me in my tracks. She lied so smoothly, spun stories about meeting friends, going to the gym, or running errands, but I could see the flicker of guilt in her eyes. Still, I told myself I was paranoid, that I was overthinking it. She was my wife, she loved me, or so I thought. One day, I decided to do a little digging. I wanted to be sure, even if part of me hoped I was just imagining things. I started checking her schedule, trying to pick up on any inconsistencies. That's when I noticed the pattern: her appointments with Dr. Carter. They were frequent, more than just routine cleanings. I didn't know what I expected to find, but my gut told me something was wrong. What really set me on fire was the security footage from the dentist's office. They installed cameras there for security, just like in every other office, but I never paid much attention. Until I did. One night I stayed up late and decided to look through the footage from her last appointment. What I saw made my blood run cold. It wasn't just a cleaning or a routine checkup. No, it was something else altogether. Lisa was sneaking into Dr. Carter's private office after hours, and they weren't just exchanging small talk. The footage showed them alone, staying in that room way past closing time, whispering, laughing. Then things got heated. The camera caught them in a quick, passionate kiss, and then more. I froze, watching the screen as they tangled, their bodies pressed together. My wife, my partner, lying there in that office with my dentist. My mind just couldn't process it. It felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. I couldn't believe it. All those nights when she'd been working late, she was really screwing around with him. And I wasn't even sure how long this had been going on. All those little signs, the secretive texts, her defensive attitude, they suddenly made sense. I kept watching, trying to grasp what I was seeing. I felt rage, betrayal, heartbreak all at once. How could she do this to me, to us? I never thought Lisa, with her sharp tongue and bitchy attitude, would cheat, especially not with someone who was supposed to be her professional, her trusted doctor. But there it was, clear as day. That night I sat on the couch, replaying the footage over and over. My hands trembled. I felt numb and furious all at once. I wanted to confront her immediately, but I knew I needed to plan carefully. I couldn't just lash out, I had to be smart. I had to find the right moment, the right words. But right then I realized everything I believed in was a lie. My wife had been lying to me for months, maybe longer. And the man she'd been sneaking around with was the very person who was supposed to fix her teeth, not ruin my life. I spent the next couple of days trying to decide what to do. The urge to confront her was overwhelming. I wanted to scream, call her out, demand answers. But I also knew I needed to get more evidence, to figure out exactly how. Deep this rabbit hole went. I started paying attention to her habits, trying to catch her in the act. I felt like I was walking on thin ice, unsure of when she'd slip or what she might say. Then, one afternoon, she left her phone unattended on the kitchen counter. I couldn't resist. I just glanced at her messages, half expecting to see more lies. Instead, I found a series of texts between her and Dr. Carter. They were explicit, flirtatious, and full of promises to see each other outside of work. She was planning to meet him again. That was the final nail. There was no denying it anymore. I had all the proof I needed. As I sat there, staring at the screen, my mind was spinning. Part of me wanted to break everything, to scream at her, to ruin her life as she had ruined mine. But another part just felt hollow, crushed, betrayed. I didn't know how to process this. All I knew was that my wife, Lisa, had become a stranger, the kind of woman who cheated on her husband with her own dentist. A woman who lied, betrayed, and shattered the life we built together. And now, I had to figure out what came next. The day I confronted Lisa was the worst day of my life. I knew I couldn't keep this secret anymore, not after what I'd seen. The evidence was clear. She had been lying to my face for months, sneaking off to meet Dr. Carter after hours, and lying about her work commitments. I felt sick just thinking about everything she'd done behind my back. I came home from work early that day, phone in hand with all the proof pulled up. My stomach was tied in knots, but I knew I had to get it over with. When I saw her sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone like everything was normal, I almost lost it. I took a deep breath and said, "Lisa, we need to talk." She looked up, her eyes narrowing. "What's wrong, Kevin? You look serious." I hesitated for a moment, then just blurted out, "I know about you and Dr. Carter. I saw the footage. I found your texts, all of it. Tell me, how long has this been going on?" Her face twisted with a mix of anger and contempt. She scoffed, "You're crazy. You're making this up. You're jealous because I look good and he pays me attention." I couldn't believe the audacity. "Cut the bullshit, Lisa. I saw everything. The kissing, the after-hours meetings, your messages. Don't even bother lying now." Her lips curled into a bitter smile. "You think I did all this just to cheat? Maybe I'm bored. Maybe your boring ass doesn't satisfy me anymore. Or maybe I just needed some excitement. Sorry to burst your bubble, but I don't owe you explanations." I felt a mixture of rage and heartbreak. "You're lying right now. You're trying to play it off like it's no big deal, but I know the truth. I saw how you look at him, how you sneak around. You're a cheating bitch, Lisa, and I want an explanation, no more lies." She sneered. "You want an explanation? Fine, here's the truth. I don't love you anymore. We're just going through the motions. That stupid marriage of ours was a mistake from the start. And Dr. Carter, he's just someone who makes me feel alive for once. You're so dull, Kevin. You're just a boring, predictable husband. This was bound to happen." The words hit me like a punch in the gut. I stared at her, feeling completely shattered. My mind raced to process her cold, callous words. She didn't even deny it anymore. She was openly admitting to her affair, throwing it in my face. I suddenly felt like I was drowning. Everything I believed in, everything I trusted, was crumbling. I couldn't hold back the surge of anger. "You're a fucking monster," I spat. "How could you do this to me, to us? I gave you everything, my love, my life, my trust, and you just threw it away for some quick sex with that bastard." Her eyes flashed with contempt. "Oh, please, spare me your righteous anger. You're not perfect either, Kevin. You think you're so great, but I see how you look at other women when I'm not around. Don't pretend you're some innocent victim here." That was the final straw. I felt my fists clenched, trembling with rage. I wanted to shake her, to scream at her, to make her understand just how much she'd hurt me. But instead, I stood there, feeling powerless, trying to hold it together. I couldn't believe I was in this position, being betrayed by my wife, who I thought was my partner, my best friend. I told her I needed some time to think, then walked out of the apartment without another word. I spent the next hours walking aimlessly, trying to process the chaos inside me. Every thought was a whirlwind: anger at her, sadness for what we lost, fear of what was coming next. I knew I had to decide whether I could forgive her, whether I even wanted to stay, or if this was the end of our marriage. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying her words, her face, the footage I'd seen. My stomach was in knots. I felt betrayed, humiliated, broken. How could she turn out to be this woman? How could she cheat with my own dentist? And the worst part, I knew this wasn't just a fling or some stupid mistake. She'd been lying for months. She'd been sneaking around, pretending to be one person while secretly living another life. I felt a deep sense of loss, a loss of trust, of dignity, of the future I thought I had with her. I started questioning everything. Were the happy moments just lies? Did she ever really love me? Or was I just fooling myself all these years? I was furious at myself for not seeing the signs sooner, for not reading between the lines. But mostly I was furious at her. Lisa, the woman I loved, had become a stranger. And the man she was cheating on me with. The dentist who was supposed to fix her teeth, not steal her heart. It was a sick twist, and I knew I had to come up with a plan. Because if there's one thing I learned, it's that betrayal like this doesn't just fade away. It demands justice, or at least my version of it. The days that followed that confrontation were a blur. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, that sneer she gave me when she told me she was done with us. I kept thinking about the footage, about the texts, about how she'd lied for so long. I felt betrayed, furious, and honestly a little lost. I knew I couldn't just let her get away with this. I had to do something, but I also had to be smart. I started thinking about the next steps, how to make her pay, how to make her realize what she'd lost. I didn't want her to walk away unscathed, especially not after what she'd done. And I definitely didn't want her to think I was going to sit around and take it. One thing I realized pretty quickly was that I needed leverage. I couldn't just confront her again and expect her to fold. No, I had to hit her where it hurt, her ego, her reputation, and maybe even her sense of security. So I decided to dig deeper into her affairs, to see if there was more than just the affair with Dr. Carter. I knew it was risky, but I felt like I had no choice. I started by going through her phone again, digging into her messages, her emails, her social media. I wanted to see if she was hiding anything else, maybe more men, more lies. It didn't take long before I found some alarming things, texts with a guy named Mark, someone she'd been talking to just recently. The messages were flirtatious, full of innuendos and promises to meet up. I felt that familiar heat of rage spike inside me. She was still lying, still hiding things. That's when I decided to follow her. I needed to see if she was really seeing this Mark guy or if she was just messing around with him online. I started parking outside our apartment building, watching her leave at odd hours, sometimes with her purse, sometimes alone. She'd go to a coffee shop or a bar and meet up with someone. I even managed to see her get into a car with Mark once, a guy who looked pretty young, maybe late 20s, with an arrogant grin on his face. By this point, I was furious but also determined. If she thought she could just cheat, lie, and walk away, she had another thing coming. I wasn't the type to sit around and let a woman like her destroy what we had without consequences. I had to think of a way to turn this around, to make her regret everything she'd done. That's when I remembered her obsession with her appearance and her little obsession with keeping her reputation intact. I knew she wouldn't want her little affair with the dentist, and now this Mark guy to come out in the open. She loved to be the center of attention, to look good, to keep her friends and social circle oblivious to her failures. So I decided to use that against her. I got in contact with an old friend, someone I knew from work, someone who knew a thing or two about the law and about exposing secrets. We hatched a plan to gather more evidence, enough to make her realize how badly she'd screwed up. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about teaching her a lesson she wouldn't forget. Over the next few days, I continued my covert operation. I set up cameras around the apartment just in case she made any more secret meetings. I even installed a small recording device in her purse, nothing too elaborate, just enough to catch her in the act if she tried to sneak out again. I knew I was playing with fire, but I couldn't stop now. The truth had to come out, and I wanted her to feel the fear, the panic, the shame of being caught. And then it happened. One night I was outside watching her leave again. She was extra cautious, trying to avoid detection. I followed her at a distance, keeping my cool. She went to the same bar she'd met Mark at, and I saw her slip into the back room with him. I managed to get close enough to hear their muffled voices through a cracked door. They were talking about making it work, about not getting caught, and she looked happy, too happy, honestly. That was the moment I knew I had her cornered. I took a deep breath and called my lawyer. We discussed my options and agreed that I had enough evidence to do something drastic. I also knew that revealing everything could get messy, but I didn't care anymore. Lisa had crossed a line, and I was ready to make her regret it. I wanted her to understand that her actions had consequences, that cheating wasn't just a game, and that she couldn't just lie her way out of this one. The next day, I prepared everything. I contacted a private investigator to verify some details and also started drafting a plan to confront her publicly if necessary. I wasn't going to play the victim anymore. I was taking control. I knew it was going to be ugly, that there would be chaos and that things might never be the same, but I also knew I had to stand my ground. I deserved better than a wife who cheated on me with my own dentist and then lied to my face every step of the way. All I could think about as I waited was how betrayed I felt, how humiliated and how sick I was of being played. But I also felt a strange sense of relief. Finally, I was doing something about it. I was fighting back. And I wasn't going to stop until she faced the consequences of her actions. The moment of truth finally arrived, and I knew I couldn't back down now. I had all the evidence I needed, her secret meetings, the flirtatious texts, the recordings from the bar. I was ready to confront her, but I also knew I had to be strategic. I didn't want her to spin some sob story, deny everything, or manipulate me again. I wanted her to see that I was serious, that I had won, and that her lies were exposed. That evening, I told her I needed to talk. She looked annoyed, brushing her hair back and giving me that bitchy smirk she always used when she was about to dismiss someone. I could feel my pulse pounding. I handed her my phone with all the evidence, screenshots of her texts, the footage from the bar, the recordings. Her face froze, her eyes widened slightly, and then she started to rage. "You're crazy," she spat. "You're stalking me now. What the hell do you think you're doing? This is over the top." I kept my voice steady. "No, Lisa, you're over the top. You've been cheating on me with Dr. Carter and Mark, and I've got the proof. I've had enough of your lies. I want the truth right now." Her face twisted in anger. "You think I owe you anything? You're just some boring husband who's too busy working to notice what's really going on. Maybe I had my fun, Kevin. Maybe I needed a break from your dull ass." I felt the rage boiling over, but I kept my composure. "You're a liar and a cheat, and I don't give a damn what you think anymore. You've been lying to me for months, betraying everything we had. No more excuses, no more bullshit." She started to cry, fake tears. I knew, trying to manipulate me. "You don't understand, Kevin. I was just lonely. You never paid attention, and Dr. Carter, he's the only one who made me feel alive. Maybe I don't want this marriage anymore." That was the moment I realized I had to hit her where it hurt. I told her I was done, that I was filing for divorce, that I wanted her out of my life. Her eyes widened dramatically, and she started screaming at me, calling me jealous, insecure, and all the other things she thought would soften the blow. But I wasn't playing that game anymore. I told her to pack her bags and leave. I wasn't going to let her stay and pretend everything was fine. I wanted her gone, and I wanted her to feel the shame of what she'd done. Her face turned red with fury and humiliation. She shouted, cursed, called me all kinds of names, just like I expected. But I didn't care. I knew I had won the battle. Her mask was falling off and her true colors were on display for everyone to see. That night, she stormed out, slamming the door behind her. I was left alone, sitting on the couch with a sick feeling in my stomach. Part of me wanted to curl up and cry to let the pain wash over me. But another part was relieved that it was finally over, that I had stood my ground, that I had taken back control. In the days that followed, I started packing up her things. She refused to take responsibility, kept trying to spin her lies, but I didn't listen. I knew the truth now, and I wasn't going to let her manipulate me anymore. I filed for divorce, got a lawyer involved, and began the process of rebuilding my life. It wasn't easy, far from it, but I knew I had to do it. For myself, and for the broken pieces of what was once a marriage I truly believed in. What's been really surprising, though, is how much lighter I feel now. The constant undercurrent of doubt, the suspicion, the betrayal, all of it lifted from my shoulders. I'm not saying I'm perfect or that I don't hurt sometimes. But I do know that I'm better off without her deception hanging over my head. I've learned a hard lesson about trust, about how sometimes people you love can turn out to be someone you never really knew. And I've learned that revenge, in its own twisted way, can be a form of liberation. Looking back, I wish none of this had happened. I wish Lisa had been honest, had told me she was unhappy instead of sneaking around. But I also see now that I can survive this. I can rebuild and I will move on. And maybe someday I'll find someone who actually values honesty and loyalty. For now, I just want to heal and forget the nightmare she turned our life into. The aftermath of everything was a whirlwind, but honestly, it's been a kind of relief in disguise. Once I filed for divorce, the weight of her betrayal finally started to lift. I threw myself into the process of healing, focusing on myself, reconnecting with old friends, working out more, and trying to rebuild some sense of normalcy. But the truth is, it's not just about moving on. It's about figuring out how I got here and making sure I don't end up in this mess again. One thing I learned is how deeply trust can be shattered when someone you love turns out to be a complete stranger. I kept replaying the moments I missed, the signs I ignored, and the lies I believed. I used to think that marriage was about loyalty, honesty, and sticking together through thick and thin. Now I realize that sometimes people hide their true selves behind masks. Lisa's mask slipped, and all I saw was the person she really was: selfish, manipulative, and willing to destroy everything for a moment of excitement. The divorce process was brutal. She fought me every step of the way, trying to spin stories about how I was overreacting, about how she needed her space, or how she was sorry but just couldn't help herself. But I wasn't going to be played anymore. I had enough evidence, enough pain, and enough heartbreak to know that I deserved better. The settlement was messy, but I insisted on fairness. I wasn't going to let her walk away with everything just because she painted herself as the victim. In the end, I managed to get custody of the dog we had, and she agreed to mostly keep her distance. I cut all ties with her family too, realizing they were just as complicit in enabling her behavior. It's hard not to feel bitter or resentful, but I made a conscious decision to let go of that anger, at least most of it. Holding onto hatred only keeps you chained to the pain. I wanted to be free to rebuild what she tried to destroy. The hardest part was facing the loneliness. For weeks, I felt like I was walking around in a fog. No more daily fights, no more sneaky texts, no more pretending everything was okay. Just silence. Sometimes I'd lie awake at night thinking about what could have been, about the future I'd envisioned now shattered. But I also realized that I had to accept what was gone. That grief is part of the process and healing doesn't happen overnight. Slowly, I started dating again. Nothing serious yet, just casual coffees, some flirty texts, and going out with friends. I'm trying to remind myself that I'm still capable of loving, of trusting again. That's what scares me most, that I might close myself off completely, afraid of being hurt again. But I know I can't let her betrayal define me. One thing that's become clear is how much I value honesty now. I used to take that for granted, but after all her lies, I see it as a precious thing. I want someone who's transparent, who can be real with me, even when the truth hurts. I've learned to listen to my gut, to pay attention to the little signs I might have ignored before. Trust is fragile, and when broken, it's almost impossible to repair. So I'm taking my time, being cautious, and trying to rebuild my faith in people. I also realized I have to forgive myself, because sometimes I blamed myself for not noticing sooner. I asked myself what I could have done differently, but I also understand that I wasn't responsible for her choices. She made her bed, and I have to accept that I did everything I could. Now, it's about moving forward, learning from this nightmare, and making sure I never get caught in a similar trap again. Honestly, this whole experience has been a brutal lesson in trust, resilience, and self-worth. It's opened my eyes to how betrayal can come from the people you least expect, and how important it is to value yourself enough to walk away from toxicity. Every day is a new challenge, but I'm determined to come out stronger. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know I'm done with the lies and I'm ready to rebuild my life on my terms. Looking back now, I realize how much this whole ordeal changed me. At first, I was shattered, completely broken by her betrayal, feeling like I'd lost the person I thought I knew. But over time, I started to piece myself back together. It wasn't easy, and I still have moments where I question everything, but I've learned a lot about myself in the process. One of the biggest lessons I've taken away is that honesty, trust, and loyalty are the foundations of any real relationship. Without those, everything crumbles fast. Lisa's betrayal proved that even the most seemingly perfect marriage can hide a world of deception. It's a harsh truth that I'll carry for a long time, but it also made me realize that I deserve someone who values those qualities. I also learned that revenge isn't always about revenge itself. Sometimes, it's about taking control of your life again. It's about reclaiming your dignity and refusing to let the betrayal define you. I could have gone down a dark path, vengeful, bitter, angry, but I chose a different route. I focused on healing, on moving forward, and on making my life better without her. If there's one thing I want anyone reading this to take away, it's that no matter how badly you get hurt, you can survive. You can rebuild. You might feel like your world has ended, but I promise it won't. Time, patience, and a little anger mixed with hope can get you through even the darkest days. Now, I'm not perfect. I still have moments of sadness, and I still get angry when I think about what she did. But I'm learning to forgive myself for trusting her, and I'm learning to forgive her, or at least, accept that she was never the person I thought she was. I've come to realize that letting go of all the pain isn't about forgetting. It's about accepting what happened and choosing to move on anyway. Most importantly, I've come to see that life is too precious to waste on bitterness and resentment. I want to focus on myself now, my health, my happiness, my future. I want to build a life where honesty and respect are non-negotiable. And as much as I wish she had been different, I now understand that I can only control my actions, my choices, and my happiness. So that's where I'm at. I've been through hell, but I'm still standing. I've got scars, sure, but they're reminders that I survived, stronger and wiser than I was before. And I hope that anyone reading this who's going through something similar knows they're not alone. It hurts now, but it gets better. Trust that, even if it's hard to see right now, there's a brighter future waiting for you. You just have to take that first step forward.